there isn't one specific thing that works for everybody. It's more around, let's look at your real life, not like a fake wellness influencer life, and then work backwards from there, you know?
Welcome to your weekly elevation, your dose of real strategies for real results in dance music. I'm Olivia, and today we're diving into something that could literally make or break your career, your health and wellness as an artist. But before we dive in, I want to say this. I used to think being healthy meant going all out, crushing myself at the gym, restricting what I ate, and beating myself up when I had a big night out. I was either pushing myself to exhaustion or just dragging myself to workouts that I hated. And I was, going through the motions and just feeling guilty the whole time. I'd force myself to do these intense routines because I thought that's what health and fitness looked like, but I was miserable and my results reflected that half-hearted effort. But here's what I learned the hard way. While it's crucial to hold yourself to high standards because, let's be honest, no one else is going to, that doesn't mean punishing yourself or taking an all or nothing approach. It's about being in tune with your body and making sustainable choices that work with your lifestyle, not against it. Sometimes that means a light walk instead of a heavy workout. Sometimes it means choosing sleep over a networking event. And that's why I'm so excited to introduce today's guest, Ethan Schiff. After transforming his own health with a 130-pound weight loss journey, Ethan made a bold decision. He left his successful artist management company to focus on something even more important, helping artists stay healthy on the road. His company, Optimized Touring, is revolutionizing how we think about wellness in dance music, and his approach is unlike anything I have ever seen before. If you're thinking this conversation doesn't apply to you yet because you're not touring, think again. The habits you build now, the mindset you develop around health and wellness, these will either set you up for success or become your biggest obstacles when those bigger opportunities arrive. So let's dive in. I've been waiting to ask you this question. What's worse for a DJ's health? Lack of sleep or too much booze?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. I would say too much booze is really rough because too much booze ends up often trickling into lots of other factors and decisions. I think the interesting thing about both sleep and alcohol is they're two things that if you don't prioritize them for different reasons, they both usually ripple into every other part of your health. So in different ways, they're probably equal, to be honest, but for different reasons. Yeah.
It's like a chicken and an egg.
Right.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about your story.
Yeah.
Tell me what sparked your transformation from managing artists. Give me a little background on that to becoming a health coach for artists, because I'm sure you were kind of already as a manager trying to keep your artists in line with their health when you were just managing them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had never really thought I would get into the health and wellness space, to be totally honest. I was somebody who, at the time, had this successful talent management company, and we had this beautiful office in downtown LA in the Arts District, and we were, traveling all over and doing all of the sort of quote unquote glamorous things, and sort of living the life that I had dedicated so many hours of work and passion and everything to get to. And for me personally, I realized that I was essentially sacrificing my personal health and well-being for my work. And so, although I was successful in making money and traveling and all this sort of stuff, I personally was well over 300 pounds. I was chronically stressed. I was staying up super late. I was eating, terrible food, all the kind of stuff. And I remember just hitting this point where I was like, oh, maybe it's just not worth it. Like, maybe it's actually not worth my entire life and how I feel every day. And so I spent about 2.5 years after honestly struggling with my health and weight kind of on and off my whole life. But it was about a 2.5 year period where I really just focused on, what would it look like to prioritize myself a little bit more. And I ended up losing 130 pounds. And beyond weight loss, it changed my whole view of myself, my sense of where work fits in within my life, and kind of the priorities within it. And through that process, I was like, oh, I want to start helping other people do the same thing. It doesn't mean it has to be tied to weight loss, but like whatever it looks like to prioritize yourself within the craziness of the music industry, like what does that look like? That's such a fascinating question to me. And that's kind of how it started.
Wow. And I think artists can relate so much to this struggle because you chose to be in the industry as an entrepreneur. This was something you chose.
Right.
It's not like, oh, screw my 9 to 5 that I'm just doing for a paycheck. I'm going to prioritize my health. It's like, no, I've also chosen this career that I love so much. And you get so zoned in on giving it your all, just as artists do, giving their artistry their all, that those things do fall by the wayside. And it's really
Totally.
hard to figure out the balance.
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, why is the music industry in particular so difficult to balance your health and your career?
I think what's fascinating about the music industry is that, similar to what you just said, it's because there's no kind of traditional pathway to get there. Most people have fought so hard to hopefully sort of be able to do it that I think once it arrives, or if you get to a place where you're like, wow, I'm actually doing this, there's this constant fear that it's going to go away all the time. There's like a fear that I have to say yes to every show or every endorsement or every PR request or interview or whatever, because it's like artists can find themselves gripping really tight to stay there. And I think when that happens, you lose your sense of self in the process, and it's just yes to everything until you hit a point where you realize it's maybe not worth it, or maybe there's a different way to do it that keeps you in the industry and successful, but in a way that's a little more sustainable and also probably more enjoyable too.
Mm. Yeah, it's such a good point. And as you grow, your strategies are going to have to change. Like the way that you fit in the sleep, the, eating habits, like they all have to change. And as we age, right? Because the same way we used to be able to eat and whatever back then doesn't work necessarily as the decades march on.
Totally. And I think what's interesting too is you're right, because there's definitely the longevity kind of aging piece where all of a sudden you're like, oh, now my lower back hurts and it didn't 5 years ago, and that sort of stuff. But I think the question is really like, is your goal long-term success in the music industry, or is your goal to kind of burn yourself out and maximize whatever you can as quick as possible, and then probably not be able to do it that long? And it's not even with judgment. I think most people would probably prefer option one, which is like, I want a long-term career and I want to enjoy it and balance my life and feel good while doing it. But I think that's a question not that many people ask themselves. They're more just, again, like thrilled and living on adrenaline and caffeine and this kind of stuff. But if the goal is really like doing it in a thoughtful, strategic way, that has to not only include touring and merch and what label partner you're working with or whatever, but also around your day-to-day kind of routines and habits also.
Yeah, it's a great point. And we'll get into some of those strategies, but I want to know, in your opinion, what's at stake for artists if they don't prioritize their health now, if they wait until, some of the consequences start to show themselves?
I think the biggest consequence becomes your entire mental health, which is a pretty gigantic one if you think about it. I think it's one thing to go, all right, I'm a DJ and I'm doing this late night set and I just know I'm not going to sleep that well because I'm not going to be back home until 2 a.m. or whatever. You're sort of know on a day-to-day basis, okay, tonight I'm going to be up late, whatever. That's one thing. But the part that's unquantifiable is the mental health piece. And that's the part that you can't really plan for in the same way that you plan for, okay, I'm going to stay up late tonight. It just will kind of be there in the back of your mind, maybe thoughts or feelings, or maybe resentment or stresses, or all this, comparison. There's body image stuff that comes up. I mean, all of that is real. And because it's hard to quantify mental health, people don't necessarily expect it to show up as it does. And then all of a sudden you're in a big depression, or you have tons of anxiety, or your social media account that you've been growing for years is now something you're caged by and completely freaking out about. And when that kind of stuff happens, you can't really predict it. But then once it's there, because you didn't plan ahead, you're sort of, or the feeling is that you're trapped and you're like, I don't know what to do. The only thing I know to do is what I've been doing, and it's now backfiring. And that's kind of a stressful and scary place to be.
Wow. That's really interesting because I feel like that can happen even if things are going well, on paper. You're still getting
Yeah,
opportunities, you're still living the life, but the lack of sleep or the indulging in things that you shouldn't be indulging in, whether it's alcohol, other substances, bad food, it compounds. And all of a
totally.
sudden, those mental health issues start to show up.
Yeah. And you're right, because, you know, every artist, every DJ is going to have a different challenge, just as every human does. Like, this isn't really, yes, there are nuances that are specific to the music industry or DJs or touring or these sorts of things. But a lot of the protocols or the areas that are helpful are not unique to humans who DJ. They're just humans. And so I think what's interesting is whether you're a super successful, huge artist, playing an arena, or a local DJ in a random club somewhere, it's going to show up differently, just like different things do for everybody. But I think the real challenge, that might be the hardest part of the whole thing mentally, honestly, is, and I know this sounds like we're taking it to a deeper level, but it's true, which is a lot of artists, a lot of DJs, a lot of anyone in the music industry starts to tie their sense of self-esteem or self-worth to the success of their music career.
Of course.
And then it's like, all of a sudden, if you're this huge artist, you're again so excited, you're gripping on for it to stay. But the second there's a mishap, or maybe you get sick and have to cancel a show, there's a panic that feels like way beyond that show. And that's where you get into this like identity and self-esteem piece that's really, really hard to kind of detach yourself from.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that. Before I worked in this industry, I was a news reporter, and
Mm.
I actually realized it was the job I wanted all throughout high school. It was what I dreamed of. I realized 6 months into my 5-year career that I fucking hated it. But my ego was so attached to being a news reporter. It was my identity. And so
Mm.
I stayed in a career that was destroying my mental health for so long because I felt that like this is what I have to do. And so
Wow.
and when I'd have good days, I would be like, yes, no, wait, no, this is what I want. And then when I'd have bad days, which were more often than not, the cognitive dissonance of like hating something bad happening, it was just a huge blow to my mental health. And when I finally broke free from that, all the other health issues I had like started to recover physically and mentally.
That's amazing to hear. And I love that you can recognize that, because I relate to it also. Like when I was doing management, I think there was a part of me that was completely attaching what I thought or had always told myself, a manager is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're sort of fighting for this image of what a manager is that's not necessarily even who you are as a person. And same thing with an artist, a DJ, a musician, a producer, whatever. It's almost like, oh, this is the role I'm supposed to play. And then that gets really stressful because when something happens or that's human, it's way beyond that specific incident. And I think that's interesting. You're talking about the news reporter where you're like, I have to do this. I have to fill this role, even if it's making me feel crazy, or super
Yeah.
stressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
And the mental and physical, it's just so closely tied. As a so much happier person now, it is so much easier to keep my weight in check,
Mm,
like
yeah.
it's not even I'm necessarily changing eating habits or anything. It's just, I don't know. Do you think there's some link there that the happier you are, the more it manifests physically?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things that I work a lot with people on is around their relationship with food in general. And I think that's often like the deepest challenge that we don't always think about is sort of like this question of like, all right, what role does food play in your life beyond hunger? And often, not everybody's the same, but often food is like a source of comfort or stress. Like the phrase stress eating is there for a reason.
Mhm.
And especially when you are working in the music industry, you're a DJ, whatever, it's a stressful lifestyle. And so this sort of like escapism or comfort or stress relief that comes from eating or alcohol or other substances or whatever else, is really, really noticeable. And I think to your point, if you're feeling better about yourself mentally and kind of that internal self image is there, you're often not needing or feeling like you need the escape that people often do. And then food is something people are generally eating 3 times a day. It's like 3 times a day, you have the chance to sort of escape that or get that
Right.
comfort. And I think a lot of times that's where it shows up without people even thinking of it that way.
Yeah, so true. It becomes like an autopilot thing. So,
Totally.
talk to me about habits, whether healthy or not, and how it impacts studio time, creative time, time to make content, whatever it is an artist needs to do to output.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's interesting is one of the most underrated things for artists or producers is what they're doing when they're not working on music. And I think a lot of the time people underestimate how much those habits and routines that are not when they're in the studio affect how they mentally and physically show up in the studio. So if you, for example, and I'm not talking through the lens of like, I think a lot of people see like wellness influencers online and they feel like they have to have this like perfect morning collagen
Right.
smoothie and meditation
Right.
and whatever. But I'm thinking more through the lens of like, do you walk in the studio feeling refreshed, feeling energized, or do you feel like you have brain fog and you're exhausted and maybe you're super bloated or you're just uncomfortable or tired? Like, that's going to affect the track that you're working on that day. That's going to affect everything you're doing that day. And especially if you're, a more public facing artist or you're creating content, it's going to affect that process or your confidence while you're doing that. It's going to affect all that sort of stuff. And so those basic habits around grocery shopping, around getting fresh air, going on a walk, for some people it is meditation, for some people it's yoga, for some people it's strength training, for some people, it's less time on their phones, or for some people, it's like healthy community and friendships and feeling seen by their partner. Like all of these sorts of things actually impact how you feel just physically and mentally and emotionally. And then you can go in the studio and crush it because you're going in feeling good as opposed to feeling kind of like beaten up.
Right. And I feel like a lot of people look at it in the reverse. It's like the studio time comes first and everything else is after. And it's like, well, actually, if you have all of those things in check, your studio time is going to be 10 times better. And so you'll probably
Totally.
have to go less frequently to work on the same track or whatever it is.
Exactly. And it's interesting, like a lot of time when I have health coaching clients that I work with who are artists, DJs, musicians, producers, whatever label you want to put on anybody, one of the things we'll do is also, and it might sound really specific, but it might be like, oh, you have a session today at this studio. let's look up healthy food options near the studio. And for my clients, I'm often literally based on their dietary goals or allergies or just whatever they're working on or we're working on together. I'm sending them like, oh, you have 5 days in the studio here. Here's different lunch options for the week that are in line with your
Love
health
that.
goals. And like that sort of thing sounds really small, but in the moment, a lot of times when people are in the studio, they're also not eating or they get like super in it and they forget to eat and then they're starving and they're like, screw it, let's just eat Taco Bell because it's next door.
Right.
But that little extra prep, and that's part of what my coaching is kind of based around, is just taking some of that pressure off of people. The little extra prep to go, oh, I know this place has this great, whatever, chicken and veggie bowl that I love that's down the street. It's actually just as easy to order that as pizza, but sometimes it takes a little more research or work or effort to find the healthy
Yeah.
option.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up. So I have a plethora of sensitivities that I'm working through right now, and it's made cooking dinner at home very difficult. Husband and I cook anyway. We're big foodies. He used to be a chef. What we're now doing, which has helped so much, is we will plan out a month of meals instead of just meal prep for the week, because then we just
Wow.
know what the grocery list is each week, and it just makes
Yeah.
it so much easier. I'm like, wow, this is just one little shift. Instead of planning weekly, we're planning monthly. It helps because we're both business owners. It just helps us not have to do that task every week and worry about that burden.
I love
So,
that.
and it's simple. Like, and what you're suggesting is so simple. But like you said, it just takes a little more research on the front end. But then that chicken bowl spot is your spot. It's your go-to whenever you need something quick.
Yeah, I love that you and your husband do that. And I'm sure you find, or I'm curious, the extra planning, sure, it takes some work up front, but then I would assume, find yourself going like, oh, I don't have to like think about this so much throughout the week or stress
Yeah,
about this or
it's huge.
forget or not have groceries and then be like, oh shit, I'm just going to eat whatever.
Yep, it's huge, and especially because that's not an option for me right now, and so like
Yeah.
it has to be done. And
Mhm.
people have their opinions about AI, but I use AI to help too. Like, I'm like, these are my allergies. We are bougie. This is what we like to eat. Like, help me come up with some different, rice bowl, quinoa bowl, like like, so it's like there's so many tools out there, free tools that you can help,
Totally.
figure this out. But yeah, that's amazing. So the lion's share of my artists that listen to this show, they still have full-time jobs, but they're also DJing, sometimes not yet touring, sometimes they are a little bit, but they're definitely spending late nights in the studio after their 9 to 5s.
Totally.
Talk to me about like the biggest health risks there from, burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And I think one of the things I want to acknowledge, is there's a reality of, especially if you're in that mode that so many people are, where they're working a kind of quote unquote regular job or a 9 to 5 job, and then they're pursuing this as their passion at night. There's the reality that that's exhausting and it's tough.
Mhm.
And, so what I try not to do is, again, go through this like sort of like pseudo fake wellness person and go like, well, just make sure you get your 9 hours of sleep or what. It's like, that's not always possible, So
Yeah.
what I will say, though, is what I encourage people to do is look at their realistic schedule for maybe a week at a time and then sort of work backwards from that. Because what often happens is people set these health goals that are just not practical for their actual schedule.
Hmm.
And then they're not only trying to extend themselves doing this late night, studio time or whatever, but they're also then beating themselves up, feeling like, well, and I also didn't eat that thing or I wanted, or I didn't get my workout in, or I'm too tired or whatever. So first is like, let's start with your actual schedule and then work back from there. And so sometimes if somebody's working a 9 to 5 job and they have a session at 7 p.m. that's going to go till midnight, they're probably not going to get an amazing night's sleep. But what they can do is look at that window from 5 to 7. And it's like, okay, so what can we do here to set you up for success? For some people, they do well with napping just to get some sleep in. For
Right.
some people, that's a perfect window to plan ahead and have workout clothes with you so that at 5 p.m. you shut your computer, you leave work, and you're going to a gym. And we've already maybe picked out a healthy dinner. And so at least you can get a workout in, or you can eat a healthy dinner, or you can nap, or you can go on a walk. It's sort of like there isn't one specific thing that works for everybody. It's more around, let's look at your real life, not like a fake wellness influencer life, and
Right.
then work backwards from there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a feeling you have a bone to pick with the wellness influencers. It's pretty bad. I think a
I
lot of them
do.
they do have
Yeah.
good intentions, some of them. But yeah, there's a lot of bad advice out there.
Well, I think I know I've mentioned it a few times. So I would say the thing that frustrates me is I work with people every day who are just like doing their best and
Hmm.
trying their best. And instead of viewing that as this beautiful thing and this beautiful opportunity, a lot of people are coming to me based on what they've seen from a wellness influencer on TikTok who we know nothing about. We don't even know if they know what they're talking about. We don't even know, you know nothing about the person. You don't even know if the video is real or not or anything, but all it's really doing is making people feel bad about themselves, or really it's making people feel inadequate, like they're not enough on their own. And so like if you're trying to improve your health from this mental place that starts with you feeling inadequate or like you're not enough, what you're naturally going to do is pick things as goals that are way too extreme, then not be able to hit those goals again because your real life doesn't really support those goals happening, and then you're going to beat yourself up and you're going to start the whole cycle over again from that place of beating yourself up. And so it never really works for people. It works for the influencer who gets lots of views on the thing, but it doesn't really work for the average person who's just trying to sort of do their best and get through the day and improve their health. And so that's where I feel like so much of my work is really like, hey, let's let go of some of those messages you've received from advertising or marketing or whatever. And let's actually look at your schedule. Let's look at your allergies and food sensitivities. Let's look at, if you have a partner, what they like to eat and who's cooking and who's grocery shop. It's like when we actually like let go of some of that and just sit within our actual real life, it becomes much easier because you're actually looking at your real life instead of a fake life online.
Yeah. I think what you're doing too is presenting an excellent case study of why being able to work with someone one on one is infinitely better than just trying to glean free advice on on YouTube, TikTok, whatever. I preach this all the time because I'm sure as a service provider you also get at, oh, can you give me tips on this and that. It's like, well, no, we can have it's not that easy. It's not that simple to just give you, tips on the fly. Like, I need to sit down with you. We need to go
Right.
over all the things that you talked about. And that's why I actually have a very optimistic view of, AI in general. I think it's a tool, but I think nothing will ever replace being able to work with someone one on one who gets you, who gets your story and your struggles. And so that's why it's so important that coaches like you exist.
Mm.
Um, for artists.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I love that you see that and, it sounds like have the same sort of viewpoint.
Yeah.
Because you're right. I mean, the reality is like everybody is different. Everybody's body is different. Everybody's goals are different. And I think, obviously there's the benefit to free advice online, and in the sense that it makes it accessible, in the sense that not everybody can
Right.
afford a one-on-one coach. But the challenge is that free advice isn't actually correct often. And so that's
Right.
the flip side, is like then people are getting the free advice, but it's actually not helping. That's the beauty of working with a coach, really, like you're saying, is you can get in that kind of like personalized perspective on it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. We really have to have our defenses up when we're consuming information online and fact checking everything.
Totally.
So you talked about this a little bit before, but talk to me about healthy eating habits with crazy irregular schedules? What are some ways that artists can maintain some good eating habits?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it might be the most important question because I think what's interesting about the healthy eating, or I guess some direct tips, would be plan ahead is number one as much as you can. And sometimes that is, again, knowing your schedule and when you're going to be in the studio. And if you're not at a home studio, like at your own home, maybe it's looking ahead at healthy options near that studio and sort of taking the extra 2 to 3 minutes to literally put the address in on Yelp and in advance and find local options that work.
Mhm.
So one thing is planning ahead for food. A second is actually like, I know it might sound crazy, but like you can cook at home and bring it to the studio
Yeah,
also.
why does nobody do? I feel like there's some sort of stigma.
Yeah,
I don't know how old you are. I'm 33.
me too.
I was
Well, I just
okay.
turned 34. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if this was true in your school, but you were not a cool kid if you brought your own lunch. Like you were
Yeah.
only cool if you had hot lunch like that you bought. And I'm daughter of Sicilian immigrants. Like I would get my food packed, and
Yep.
that was like the nerdy thing. There's some sort of weird stigma about bringing your own food somewhere that we need to dismantle.
Totally. I love that you said that. I'm with you 100%. And it's so interesting because again, I think within the music industry there's also this element of sort of, I don't know if being cool is like the most sophisticated way to word it, but there is this element similar to what you're describing. It's like the same situation where it wasn't cool in middle school to bring your own lunch to the cafeteria. It's like not cool as an adult to bring your own dinner to the studio. It's like kind of
Yeah.
the same the same thing,
What?
but
So stupid. We have to destigmatize, like, let's normalize bringing your own
totally.
food to the
And
studio.
we're going to normalize bringing food to the studio. And also, by the way, especially if you're, a sort of quote unquote struggling artist or you're not doing it full time, you also save money doing that versus ordering Grubhub delivery or whatever. So the money saved from bringing your own food is another benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. I will die on that hill with you. Um, okay. So exercise routines for those who are working two jobs or, working a job, going to the studio, or those on the road, and not
Yep.
every hotel necessarily has a great gym. What are some ways they can build up an exercise routine that works?
Totally. So I would say I'm going to go in each scenario if that's okay. So somebody who's on the road and then somebody who's just busy and maybe working two jobs. So if you're on the road, what I'll often do is first we look at your, schedule. We look at your tour dates, and oftentimes I'll be added to the team's kind of like master tour, or if they're using an app similar to that, to get a sense of, if you're in hotels, which hotels do have gyms included and which don't. And otherwise, if you're touring maybe in a van or driving yourself or something like that, we just look at your driving schedule. So like first is starting with the schedule. Again, that's like the same for everybody. Is like, let's start with your actual schedule and then go from there. When you're on the road, I would say, yes, your goal is exercise, but your real goal is to feel good by the time you go on stage. And so the goal is not to find windows where you can beat yourself up as hard as you can in the gym. The goal is to do it's almost like, let's do the minimal effective dose of exercise that helps you mentally feel good and get some good endorphins going, physically get your body moving. Maybe we're doing some stretching and mobility type of stuff so you feel good on stage. And you're really avoiding injury. You're not pushing yourself too hard, because the worst thing is you go and crush your workout and throw out your back and have to cancel a show. That workout wasn't effective if we look at it that way. So when you're on the road, it's like, let's look at our windows, prioritize sleep over working out, honestly, when you're on the road. And then within those windows, let's build in, some light to medium weight strength training, some stretching and mobility, or some, gentle, moderate cardio, just that's going to like keep things going. That's probably not the time where you're trying to crush your fitness routine or get super fit or toned or defined. It's like, that's kind of the off season. Touring is
Right.
like, let's just feel good. And then as far as the artists that are not on tour and are more just kind of busy or in the studio and that sort of thing, I think for that, again, starting with scheduling and looking at your windows you can work with. And the second is noticing that often for those people, again, really busy, and what comes with that is you're really tired and you're probably not getting a lot of sleep or at least a consistent schedule. From that lens, what we want to do is think of exercise as something that is like going to boost your energy for the day as opposed to a place where you max out your energy. And so sometimes that's doing a 20-minute workout. And I think the challenge is flipping the script where we've often kind of been conditioned to think, well, we need an hour or else it's not an effective workout. That's like a really normal. I think that comes from like group fitness class culture because those classes are normally an hour. So people think that way. But if you're working 2 jobs essentially and you're really busy, if you have an hour window, I would rather you work out 20 minutes and cook for 40 minutes and use the hour that way. Because again, it boosts your mood, but often even a short workout will improve the rest of your healthy habits the rest of the day. Like if you work out, you're more likely to eat healthy that day. You're more likely to drink water throughout the day. And that kind of positive ripple effect is what I would be more concerned with than like crushing some boot camp HIIT class for an hour for no reason.
Wow. I love that reframe. That's so amazing. I feel like I have to remind myself sometimes about the timing of workouts, and I love that. And it's funny that we're talking about this because my husband and I last night we're going to Miami Music Week. It's for a full week, and we're like, okay, when we get there, immediately ordering from Whole Foods all our snacks and stuff. You know, we're gonna find the gym. Like we're so locked into that because we know if we don't do that, the weeks after when we get back are going to suck. The recovery time is going to suck. Like people don't realize, especially as you get older, even if you're not drinking or going crazy, just the throwing off from your day-to-day schedule are going to have those negative ripple effects.
Totally. And I love that you guys are already doing that. See, you get it. You get it completely.
This is my life. This is why I wanted you on the podcast because I just wanted you to validate me.
Yeah. But I think what you said is so important, which is like the hardest part is the extra prep. It's not actually hard, but it's hard mentally because it's a shift. It's like looking ahead and going, where's the gym? Where's the Whole Foods or whatever the place is that you're going to shop? Once you've done that, there's some peace of mind. And when you land on the flight to Miami, you already have done the hard work. It's harder if in the moment on the fly, you're like, right now I have an hour. Right. Oh shit, where do I work out? So it's just like that prep makes it so much easier for anybody.
So true. So tell me I know that every person is different, but tell me some things that you've kind of found across the board have been just really valuable for artists to like invest in, like some resources, whether it be, I don't know, an Aura ring or like an alarm clock that keeps their phone. Like, is there anything that you love or that you personally use that you can recommend?
Yeah, I would say, and again, everybody's different, like you said, but I think a good quality water bottle. It sounds so simple, but a good quality water bottle, and that you're carrying that water bottle with you, you are going to drink more water than if you're just randomly, especially when you're busy and on the road. So a good quality water bottle. I actually think, especially because most people don't have like blackout curtains in their bedroom, some sort of sleep mask that's comfortable is really helpful. To have that like total darkness while you're sleeping is a big one. The other one I would say is, depending on the person, if there's some sort of guided meditation app, that can be really helpful because especially for creatives, there's usually, I don't want to generalize, but often there's a lot of anxiety that comes with the profession and a lot of stress. And having, there's an app called Insight Timer that I love that's really good for guided meditation. Headspace is another one. But you can go in. I did it an hour ago, actually. Yeah. And you can find a 5-minute guided meditation or a 10-minute guided meditation. And most of them are free. And especially when you're feeling that stress or something to maybe start the day, like some sort of guided meditation app is really helpful. So I guess water bottle, sleep mask, meditation app, those are 3 relatively cheap, kind of accessible ones.
Yeah, I love that. you can't really make an argument against why you shouldn't do any of those things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then if you want to go down the rabbit hole, you could look at things that are, fitness clothes, for example, that are going to make you more motivated if fitness is your goal. It might sound silly, but often just like having new workout shorts that you feel good in, like, is going to help motivate somebody to go, or running shoes that feel good. Another kind of wild card one, if I can throw one more out there.
Yeah.
There's an app called All Trails. I don't know if you're familiar with All
No.
Trails by any chance. It's the best. It's free. I think they have a paid version, but basically it's like Yelp, but for trails. So parks, hiking, running trails, bike paths, anything outdoors, basically. So you can it'll track your location, or if you're going to be traveling somewhere, you can put in the address where you're going to be, and it pulls up every park, again, running paths for hiking anywhere. And it gives you, people post photos, reviews, oh, this is dog friendly or not, or this was really busy on this weekend, or this isn't shaded. Or this is shaded, or whatever, bring sunscreen. Like, people post tips. And so that can be a way to like get outside your routine with exercise. And especially when you're traveling, like if you put that in Miami, I bet you would find a bunch of stuff you would never even think about that's there.
So that's so cool.
It's
I am
awesome.
going to download. I love walking. Walking has been the single like walking changed my life, literally. Like, as someone who
Wow.
used to be like a hardcore gym rat, and then realized that like all those things you were saying, going crazy, hit workouts, like trying to max out every single time, was like just not working for me. Walking
Wow.
changed everything. And so I love that. I mean,
That's amazing. What was it?
it's,
Can I
what was
ask
what?
you? Yeah. What was it like for you to slow it down and get more into walking? What did it do for you?
Well, first of all, I dropped 20 pounds. Like, as
Wow.
someone who used to like deadlift 250, okay, like I was like hardcore into it.
Wow.
That was like that was like the aesthetic benefit. But I also, having a business and stuff, like I'm so busy. I actually, when I would do it on the treadmill, because I was going to say, it's 40 degrees here today in Chicago, which is amazing. But, most of the time it's too cold to walk outside. The treadmill gave me time to like watch a show. I never watch anything or listen to any other podcast or whatever, but it gave me like that me time. Also reflection, just like being able to like think about things. And so, and then being outside, obviously, I can be outside walking without my phone, just looking at architecture, nature, whatever. Like, it's amazing. It's free. I'm a huge fan of walking. So that was a very good tip.
I
Thank you.
love that. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. And I think more
Yeah.
people need to hear that. So like, that's so cool that you're talking about that. And you're right, because I think a lot of people, again, we could go on rants about why, but like, I think a lot of people look at something like walking as like, oh, this isn't enough. This isn't hardcore enough. I'm not going to burn enough calories. And it's like, well,
False.
actually it's enjoyable, and that
Mhm.
should count for something.
And you don't gas yourself out, so you're not as hungry. So I feel like it controlled my eating. Like, after a crazy day, and of course, like, I had those weightlifting goals at the time. Like, I was like trying to get super jacked, whatever. My life has changed. I had less time for that, so it just wasn't really working. But
Mhm.
like, I ate so much more because I was starving from all the exertion. So like, walking has just been a nice way to balance it out. So
Yeah, I love that. And helps your blood sugar after meals too.
yes, yes. Okay, last question. What are you looking for in a client? Because I'm sure you get submissions that sometimes aren't a good fit. So if someone wants to work with you, what are you looking for?
That's a great question. That's a great question. Um, I think what I'm looking for is to be on the same page with a person about how we're going to do this. And I think what that means is I want to talk to the artist, talk to the producer, talk to the DJ, the musician, whoever the client is, as a human, and kind of be like, let's like get a little vulnerable here. Like, what would make you feel good? And let's like operate from that place first. I'm not the person who's going to be this super flashy, uh, hype man, like celebrity, like in awe of the person. Like, it doesn't matter how big or small the artist is. I just look at them as sort of like human.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as weird as it might sound, sometimes that's not what an artist is used to on their team. They're kind of used to people like glorifying them. And if we can be real and kind of on the same page and like pull all of it away and just be like, all right, me and you, we're just here. It's just us. This is totally confidential. Like, talk to me. Like, what are you feeling? That type of depth and kind of vulnerability is going to make all the difference. So I think that's probably the first place I'd look. And then the second one is just that their goals are realistic. I think sometimes, similar to what I mentioned earlier about like, while you're on tour is probably not the time you're getting like the most shredded of your life. It's important that me and the client are on the same page about what our goals are and how we're going to do it. As opposed to them thinking I'm going to, magically give them a 6-pack while they're touring 6 nights a week. And I think just being on the same page of goals is important.
Wow. This has been one of my favorite conversations on the show. Thank you for just for sharing so much of your knowledge. I know that my audience is going to benefit from this.
Amazing. I've loved talking to you. Thank you. I'm down to do this anytime you want.
What strikes me most about Ethan's approach is just how practical and realistic it is. Sometimes us humans, we tend to overcomplicate things and we just need someone to show us the way. He's not preaching perfection or suggesting we all need to become fitness influencers. Quite the opposite. He's showing us how to make better choices within the crazy reality of this industry. And the stories he shared about artists struggling with their health really hit home for me. We've all seen talented people burn out or have to take a step back because they didn't prioritize their well-being early enough. Now, whether you're playing local gigs or international festivals, your health just isn't about looking good. It's about sustaining a long-term career in music. The artists who last in this industry aren't just the most talented. They're the ones who learn how to take care of themselves. Thank you so much to Ethan for that incredible conversation. I am definitely going to have Ethan back later this year. Now, remember, success in dance music isn't about luck. It's about strategy. That's your weekly elevation. I'll talk to you next week.